The signal from Kepler-442b. Dr. Sarah Chen had been monitoring the deep space array for 647 nights when the signal arrived. Not that she counted anymore. The isolation of the Antarctic Research Station had a way of making time irrelevant, each day blending into the next in an endless cycle of static and silence. The station itself was built for solitude. 300 kilometers from the nearest human settlement, the facility housed a dozen researchers rotating on 6-month shifts, scanning the heavens for any hint of extraterrestrial transmission. Most nights, Sarah worked alone in the observation room, a hexagonal chamber lined with monitors displaying data streams from radio telescopes scattered across the frozen continent. She had long since accepted that she would probably never find anything. The universe, despite its vastness, seemed intent on maintaining its silence. But the work itself was meditative, watching the patterns of cosmic noise, the random fluctuations of distant stars, the occasional burst of radiation from a dying pulsar. In the isolation, she had found a kind of peace, a rhythm that matched the slow breathing of the Antarctic night. The signal began at 2:47 a.m. local time, though local time was a convenience fiction this far south, where the sun disappeared for months and the concept of day and night became theoretical. Sarah was reviewing data from the previous shift, nursing her 4th cup of coffee, when the alarm chimed softly, a gentle notification that something had exceeded background noise thresholds. At first, she assumed it was a glitch. Equipment malfunction was common in the extreme cold. Despite the best efforts of engineers, she pulled up the relevant data stream, expecting to see the characteristic signature of a hardware error, or perhaps interference from the station's own systems. Instead, she saw a pattern. It wasn't the kind of pattern you might expect from a Hollywood movie. No obvious mathematical sequence, no prime numbers or geometric progressions. This was subtler, more organic, a rhythm embedded in what should have been random noise, like a heartbeat hidden in static. The frequency modulation showed peaks and valleys that repeated in ways that natural phenomena simply didn't. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she isolated the signal and ran it through the analysis protocols. The source coordinates placed it in the direction of Kepler-442b, an exoplanet in the constellation Lyra, approximately 1,200 light-years from Earth. It was one of the most promising candidates for potential habitability, a rocky world in the habitable zone of its star, with conditions that might, possibly, support life as humans understood it. But that was 1,200 light-years away. If this signal had originated there, it had been traveling through space for 12 centuries before reaching Earth. The beings who sent it, if there were beings, might have been dead for 1,000 years, or they might have evolved into something unrecognizable, or they might be exactly as they were, impossibly patient, waiting for a response that would take another 12 centuries to reach them. Sarah spent the next hour verifying the signal's authenticity, running every test she could think of to rule out terrestrial interference, satellite transmissions, or cosmic coincidence. Each test confirmed what her instruments were telling her. This was real, it was artificial, and it came from the stars. At 4:15 a.m., she finally picked up the phone to call Director Petrov. "Sarah, do you know what time it is?" His voice was thick with sleep, irritated at being woken in the middle of the Antarctic night. "We received a signal," she said quietly, "a real one, from Kepler-442b." There was a long pause. When Petrov spoke again, his voice had changed completely. "I'll be there in 5 minutes. Don't touch anything, don't tell anyone else." The next hours passed in a blur. Petrov arrived with Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the station's signal analysis specialist, and together they recreated Sarah's verification tests. Each time, the results were the same. By 8 a.m. station time, all three of them sat in silence, staring at the monitors displaying a signal that should not exist. "We need to inform the network," Tanaka said finally. "SETI protocols require immediate notification of any verified." "Wait." Petrov held up a hand. "Before we do that, I want to understand something." "Sarah, you said the signal has a rhythm. Can you isolate it? Make it audible?" Sarah hesitated, then nodded. She had already done this, in the quiet hours before calling Petrov, but had been hesitant to share it. The audible translation of the signal was unsettling. She typed commands, routing the modulated frequency through an audio converter. The speakers crackled to life. What emerged was not the clean tones of a synthesized message, but something more organic. It sounded almost biological, a low, rhythmic pulsing that rose and fell in intensity, punctuated by higher frequency chirps and warbles. It could have been whale song, if whales sang in the vacuum of space. It could have been music, if music could be composed by minds that had never known Earth's scales or harmonies. But underneath the rhythm, barely perceptible, was something else. A regularity that was too precise to be natural. Markers that repeated at exact intervals. embedded in the organic-sounding fluctuations like a carrier wave supporting a more complex message. They listened for 10 minutes without speaking. The sound filled the observation room, alien and strangely beautiful. A voice from an impossible distance speaking in a language humanity had never heard. "It's trying to communicate," Sarah whispered. "It has to be. This isn't random. This isn't just noise. Something made this, and sent it out, hoping someone would hear." Petrov's face was pale. "Or it's a beacon. A warning." "A warning about what?" Tanaka asked. "I don't know. But think about it. Why would a civilization broadcast into space? What would motivate you to send a message that wouldn't be received for centuries, maybe millennia? Either desperate hope or desperate warning." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Antarctic cold. "We're going to study it, right? Decode it. Figure out what it means." "Of course," Petrov said, but he didn't sound certain. "But carefully, very carefully. We're not just receiving a message, Sarah. We're making first contact with a civilization 1,200 years older than when they sent this. We have no idea what we're dealing with."
Over the following days, the signal continued. It was constant, unchanging, as if broadcasting on an endless loop. The team expanded, other SETI stations confirmed the detection, and soon specialists from around the world were collaborating remotely, analyzing every aspect of the transmission. Sarah found herself sleeping less and less, unable to tear herself away from the monitors. The signal had become an obsession, a mystery that demanded solving. She began to hear it in her dreams, that pulsing, organic rhythm, those precisely spaced markers. Her subconscious mind worked on the problem while she slept, presenting her with strange visions of alien worlds and vast distances. 2 weeks after the initial detection, Tanaka made a breakthrough. She had been analyzing the precise timing of the recurring markers when she noticed something. They corresponded to mathematical relationships, but not the simple arithmetic sequences everyone had been searching for. Instead, they reflected more complex patterns, fractals, strange attractors, the kind of mathematics that described chaotic systems and natural growth patterns. "It's not a language," Tanaka explained, her eyes red from lack of sleep. "Or rather, it's not a language like ours. They're not trying to communicate with words or symbols. They're trying to share understanding. Mathematics as a universal truth, yes, but mathematics that describes life, growth, complexity. They're showing us how they think." Sarah studied the new analysis. Tanaka was right. Once you stopped looking for linear communication and started seeing the signal as a holistic pattern, meanings emerged. Not words exactly, but concepts. The sense of vast time, of patience, of cycles that repeated and evolved. The impression of intelligence that thought in patterns humans barely understood. And underneath it all, that organic pulse. Like a heartbeat. Like breathing. Like something alive. "There's more," Tanaka continued, pulling up another display. "I've been running SPECT.